Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the beginning of the spring series of the Allheart Podcast. This is the first episode of the spring series. It's going to be 10 straight weeks of episodes with 10 new guests each week. It's going to be spanning from today, March 6th, to March 8th. It's going to be weekly every single Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Today, I have Isabelle McCarthy with me. Isabelle, you want to tell the audience who you are for a second?
Yeah, hello. My name is Isabelle McCarthy, and I'm a junior at a high school right now. And I'm a writer for TWSN, and I mainly just write about like the NFL, MLB, and college football. So
Awesome. So let's get right into it. When did you start being interested in sports for the first time?
the first time was probably when I was 4 years old, and I started playing soccer. And then I got a little bit older, and probably when I was around 10, my dad introduced me into football, and that's when I started getting a knack into just watching football a lot. And I know back when I was younger, like maybe 5, 6, my family would always watch college football, and we'd have a specific team because we lived in Florida back then. It'd always be the Florida Gators. It'd always be a time where you root for them and all that. So back in my childhood, it was a pretty nice time to just be a fan. And so
I'm going to assume, was that post Tebow or was that during Tebow Mania? Because I'm trying to
that
remember
was
when.
actually during Tebow Mania, and
Okay.
I remember just a brief bit of it because I was obviously younger. So, but like I just remember all the time. My cousins were always talking about him. They'd always have like magazines in their rooms and all that, and just a fun time.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like the first example of during this episode, just the difference between me, who was like probably a sixth grader, seventh grader around the time of Tebow Mania, and you who were obviously much younger, just the discrepancy there and difference in memories. I just vaguely remember Tebow Mania because I remember him coming to the Denver Broncos, and that was the biggest memory from my childhood with his
Yeah.
throwing motion. But awesome. So when did you first start being interested in writing?
Probably a little bit about 2, 3 years ago is when I started like figuring out, well, I can write really well. And like my teachers had started realizing that like I could write good essays, I could write good journals, I could write anything that was required that was a writing assignment. And then I realized, well, what if I incorporate sports, something I love, into something that I'm good at? And that's just when it all started, really.
Awesome. So what would you say is your first experience in sports writing?
Well, my first experience was when I first got the internship at TWSN, and I was offered during the summer of last year to start being an intern for them. And the first assignment was writing about Aaron Rodgers, and because that's when the Aaron Rodgers drama was going on, I figured, well, I'm interested in this topic. I really like to see and like to get my ideas out to where it's going to go. And my first article was basically the time to trade Aaron Rodgers is now. And I basically went off on it and how like the Aaron Rodgers like speculation where he should go, if he should be traded, obviously, or like if he could stay. And that was kind of like my first like time getting into writing so of sports.
Awesome. So how'd you said you joined TWSN, but how was the like process there to join? Like how'd you first find out about it and how'd you end up
Um,
joining?
I remember one of my friends had recommended it to me, and they said, "You really like sports, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I really like sports," and I had briefly had seen like the company and all that because I realized because I remember hearing about the boss Malik Wright, who was speculating that Jamar Chase would be the number one overall pick and all that. I remember reading all about that and how he was like he's going to be taken basically and all that. And I was like, this is a really interesting company. And like most of the stuff that was going on in free agency and all that was being spot on from him. And I was like, okay, this is a reliable like company, and I pretty much put them up there in like the top companies that I see that are going places. And I'm like, I saw the internship applications. I'm like, why not give it a shot? Because like, there's really nothing I'm doing over the summer besides basically laying around and stuff or doing soccer stuff. And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. And being able to like have a time where I can like express myself, being able to have that interview where I had never been interviewed in my life before. So that was new to me. And like being able to like give my ideas and what I could bring to the table kind of like made me feel good about myself. Like, cause like just alone, like when you have a family who loves sports, that's just in your inner circle. But like being able to connect with other people who love the same things that you do, it's a good feeling. So
Yeah, 100%. I'm completely on board with that. I totally know that from my personal experience, just working with sports journalism, working with covering sports, and being able to bring that into your personal life and just with people who understand and just give your own insights, make yourself kind of, is it weird to say, kind of like feel like a source of credibility, I guess, or
yeah,
just like you saying that you've like heard some stuff and like people being able to like hold your like thoughts and like use that as their input into what they think. It's a really interesting way to like kind of not really elevate yourself, but just kind of like insert yourself into any discussion you want about sports and like kind of have your own view on it. And a lot of people will give you credence for that view. What's been your favorite memory so far in the field of sports journalism?
I think my favorite memory so far was it was an article I wrote, and it was actually recently, and it was comparing a rookie season to another rookie season, and it was comparing Evan McPherson's rookie season to just Tucker's rookie season because I had seen it all around the internet. It's been a hot topic about the two, and I'm like, okay, I see the comparisons being made, but I see just the basic stats being compared. I see everything that anybody can go look up, obviously. Anything that anybody can go and say, okay, this dude is better than this other player because of just these basic stats. I went down there and I went through all the stats, ESPN, PFF, everything. And I went and looked at everything, analyzed everything, and I'm like, this argument is really close, but not because of what people think. Because there's more research that can be made to compare these two. And it just was a good feeling to go in and be able to research these things and realize not everybody can compare things because of just one thing. You have to go down there and look deeper into things to like be able to really say, are these two comparable? How similar are they? I mean, I was looking at stats from Justin Tucker's rookie year, and one of the most notable ones was he went 4 for 4 on 50-plus yard field goals. Evan McPherson hit 9 out of 11 50-plus yard field goals. He at least hit twice as many as Justin Tucker, and I think being able to like say, well, this guy did only this, and this guy only had this percentage in his kicks and all that. I feel like that's just basic alone, but being able to go and going deeper makes it more special because you're able to look at a different perspective that nobody else is willing to.
Awesome. Yeah. I 100%. I've done deep dives before. I've done a lot of deep dives when covering stories in the past, and just like covering and analyzing the two kickers seasons is definitely a great way to kind of get some, just kind of, I guess, insight into a more like informative and introspective kind of form of sports journalism. So totally on board with that. Are you considering pursuing this field when you go to college?
Been asked that quite a bit actually from my parents, and it's been up for debate. Obviously, I've had a dream since I was little to go into college, become a lawyer, and all that. But I've always been told I have a knack for sports. I have a knack to just edit anything at the table, just talk about sports or stuff. I mean, if that's all I could do, that's all I would want to do. And being able to watch shows on
We're experiencing a few technical difficulties. Give us a second. We will fix this. While we're waiting for Isabel to get back on right now, we do have quite a few interesting guests that are going to be coming on the show in the future. If you'll allow me to, I'm not going to be able to pull it up right now. So, as far as the future dates go, next week is going to be Jacob Hallenstein, and he's going to be talking about some business. March 20th is going to be my podcast partner for the Right Way Sports Network, and that's Justin Lacertosa. And we're going to be having a full hour-long discussion about our favorite stuff in professional wrestling and just our passion about it. March 27th is going to be Matt Blaustein, who is a former Wisconsin Badgers fullback who was a dynamic player from the 2004 to 2008 seasons in Wisconsin. He ended up joining the Detroit Lions in their practice squad, but was released by them. He played a few years in the Arena Football League in um, in the years following, and now he has an executive position actually at the University of Wisconsin on campus Hillel. It's very interesting. He's got a very interesting story. The week after him is going to be Noah Avery, one of my friends, and he is going to be discussing a more harrowing story, a more inspirational, but at the same time harrowing. He's going to be discussing some things about his past struggles with addiction, but him overcoming that and being able to flourish in college and really just pushing through all the adversity that causes. On April 10th, it's going to be Cozy Rost, and we're going to be talking about loss and grief and just loss of parental figures. April 17th is going to be Ken Wang, who is a foreign exchange student at University of Wisconsin-Madison, and he is absolutely brilliant, and he has a lot of interesting information to share. April 24th is going to be my brother, Josh, and we're going to also be talking about some loss and grief stuff, but as well as some other topics. They may or may not be geopolitically based, but we will see from there. And then May 1st and May 8th is going to be a combination of the following. It's going to be Joe Frankowski, Ben London, Devlin Goodbridge, Caden Sinner, and potentially Mason Reuter. And we're going to be talking about, I think what they said they wanted to talk about was non-bad conspiracy theories. So stuff like, are birds real? Kind of more joking based stuff. So we shall see what happens there. For right now, we are just waiting for Isabelle to rejoin. So I guess I can just talk a little bit more about what the Allheart Podcast is. It is a podcast that's going to be running weekly for 10 weeks here, for 60 minutes a day. And what it is basically aiming to do is give people a platform to share their stories, share their thoughts, and just get their names out there. And so already so far, I think Isabel's been a wonderful guest. She's had some internet issues. She's going to be coming back. She's just restarting her computer. But as we wait for her to rejoin, just giving some more credence onto why I decided to start this podcast. I started this podcast back in November of 2021 after I decided to give my friend Kate Heinberg a showcase to talk about his battle with long COVID. It was a very interesting episode. It was a lot of stuff that I did not know about. There was a lot of near tears shed by me. It was an incredibly inspirational, incredibly emotional episode, but I felt incredibly happy to get to just share a story with a wider audience. And then the week after that, I interviewed Alan Purvis, who is a social media influencer at University of Wisconsin. His TikTok account has 57,000 followers. He has various sponsorship deals. And yeah, so as Isabelle comes back on right now, we're going to go into the second half of her interview. But just stay tuned for those future interviews of the Allheart Podcast. All right, so we're back. Let's continue where we left off. All right, that's all good. Let's just go into the next topic. So let's just talk a little bit about topics of success and adversity. And just what adversity have you faced in your experience as a sports writer thus far?
As being a sports writer, obviously, it's been hard to be like being a woman and all that. Is like that's the biggest adversity for me, is being told that you're a female in a male dominant field, that because you're a female, your opinion does not matter, or because you're a woman, you should not be allowed to talk about these kind of things. And having to deal with that, to me, has been kind of an obstacle, but not at the same time, not really an obstacle. It's just something that I have been having to just deal with, and have to be like, okay, this is one person's opinion. It's not everybody else's opinion. And I know that it's not everybody else's opinion. And I get people are like that, and I understand. People will have these one-sided views on things, and I understand that, okay, this is your opinion. We are allowed to have our own opinions. But is your opinion wrong? Yes, most likely. But I understand you still have it. And being able to go through it and like overcome it has been the biggest thing is that, yes, I know I'm a female. I know I am a young female in this male dominant world. And I know that my opinions are not always going to be correct. I know they might not always be right too. But at the same time, I still have a voice and I am still allowed to say things and have these views and be able to have this like interest and perhaps making it a career too. And that I think at the end of the day, we're all male and female and we all have our own views on everything. But being able to accept somebody's opinion is one thing, but just flat out saying, oh, you're just this person, like you're just a female, you're not allowed to have this view. I think it's bad, in my opinion, is the bad thing about it. But at the same time, I enjoy having a challenge and being able to overcome it. So I think that's the biggest adversity I've been facing.
Awesome. How have you, I think you've already described it a little bit, but just how have you kind of managed to deal with that adversity? I remember seeing, I don't have a picture of it. If I had a picture of it, I would cast it up. I remember seeing that you did deal with an individual on Twitter a few weeks back who did not agree with one of your sports takes, I believe. And it just, you handled it very professionally. And I really like the way you handled it. But just give me just like one or two examples of just specific incidences on how you've handled that adversity and just how you've been able to fight back against it and say, look, I'm here and you need to deal with it.
Yeah. One thing is having respect for the other individual and calling them names or like just flat out, like just blatantly just like coming at them is not the way to handle it. It really is not. It does nobody any good in that situation. Just makes the person being attacked look worse, in my opinion. And so coming at them at a polite way and saying, okay, I understand. And like being able to say, like when they come after me for something I said or something, or maybe an article I wrote, I'm like, I appreciate you checking this out. Please feel free to like read more of it or feel free to like look at other people's like things, because the best way to handle it is to just be polite about it and respect that, okay, yeah, you came after me and yeah, it sucks. But to make it less of a blow is being able to handle it in a mature manner and being able to like not come after them the way that they're coming after you, because being able to treat others the way you want to be treated is basically how to handle a situation. Because when others see it and when other people realize you've been able to handle this very well, no matter where it is, and just taking that approach makes people less likely to come after you, and it makes people realize, oh, what I said might have been wrong, and they might be more likely to apologize for it. And because the way handling it with respect is just the way I've learned to grow up with, and being able to handle in that kind of scenario is something that I like to deal with, because I want it to be known that I treat others with respect. I want to be treated the same way. So
Yeah, and I gotta give you a hand for that. That's really something that I didn't really even manage to learn until I want to say like freshman, sophomore year. You're always going to have those naysayers, whether it be on social media or outside of it. And the way that you've handled it is just really mature, especially for someone your age, being in high school junior. And especially being someone who is frequently picked on and frequently targeted, especially being a young woman in the field of sports journalism, which is primarily dominated by older men. It's just really great to see that you've already like been able to just take this in a very mature approach. And like as much as I can, I understand that sometimes in general people will want to like push back, people will want to actively push back against it. It's not really, having people naysay against what you're saying is a really crappy feeling. But just seeing you be able to handle it with such grace and just such maturity is really great to see. So I'm really happy just like that you've been able to deal with it in a very mature way. It's really impressive to see. So let's just talk a little bit about stuff that you've been covering. And, we have the NFL draft coming up, but we also have the NFL offseason coming up. And this is what I like to call the fun part of the interview. So let's talk a little bit about the NFL. Let's start with some predictions on free agency and trades. And I think the first person we got to talk about is Aaron Rodgers. And I just want to hear your impression of what you think is going to happen.
I'm going to stick with what I said last year. And I had said that it was time to trade him back then. And I still believe that. And I still believe he would go to Denver Broncos. And now, granted, some of the things have changed that would slightly change why, but it still doesn't give me any less of a reason to say he will most likely go to Denver if he does not stay with Green Bay. He's going to Denver. And one of the main points was that person he was engaged to, obviously, they broke up and all that, but like she had lived in near Denver and all that, and that was one of the things. But at the same time, Denver can offer things that Green Bay really can't, and I feel like that's having wide receivers. I mean, yes, Green Bay has Devante Adams, and they have Alan Lazard, and they have a bunch of other people, but I don't think they have what Denver has. And I feel like Denver's they're building something down there, and all they need is a quarterback. That's really all they need. I mean, guy's not going to be Drew Lock. It's not going to be Teddy Bridgewater. They just need a main guy, and I feel like it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, and they can give up enough for it to be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. I think even as a Green Bay Packer fan, just seeing the offseason, seeing what's happening, seeing the attitude that's being shown by guys in the locker room and outside of the locker room, seeing the attitude by the fan base, and just seeing the overall impression what people have about Rodgers and just how he's kind of turned himself into a pariah this past season just because of his attitude and just kind of, dickishness, I guess, is the best way to say it. His standoffishness, his stubbornness, his exemplary behavior of a non-team player, I guess, is the best way to put it. Denver Broncos do seem like the best place for him. I think he does have Nathaniel Hackett there as their new head coach, his former offensive coordinator, who he is very fond of and very excited to potentially make an appearance with, to work with him. I think there's a lot of incentives on going there. I think you have one of the best running back tandems in the league there in Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon III. I think you also have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler, who hasn't really been able to break out yet, but I do think he's great. I think also you got Tim Patrick there. That's a really loaded wide receiver core. And then you have Noah Fant, who's criminally underrated. And with a slightly above average offensive line, where I think they're going to use a lot of draft leverage this year in offensive line building, I think that offense is set. I think if Rodgers comes in, they are a quarterback away. The question for me always comes up is AFC West is going to be the most competitive division in football. Is Rodgers going to want to go in there? And I'm really interested to hear what your response is for that. Do you think Rodgers is really going to want to go into a division where there's more competition and less of a likelihood to make it to the Super Bowl or the playoffs?
I think, and this is my opinion on it, is that if he goes to the AFC West, then he is seen as a person who is willing to take the challenge. Because obviously we look at the NFC North, and you got the Minnesota Vikings, the Lions, and then you got the Bears. To me, that they are not much of a threat at all. I mean, obviously you saw the Vikings beat them at least once and all that. And then you have the big rivalry between the Bears, and then you had Aaron Rodgers do the I own you thing. And then you have the Lions, which, well, there's really nothing much to say about that. Just we all know how that goes all the time. But when you look at Rodgers and you look at what people are saying about him, obviously I feel like he thinks it's more about how he is viewed. But at the same time, he really doesn't care, it seems like, how he's viewed. So if he takes it upon him to say, I accept this challenge going into the AFC West, then that's him saying, I can go out there and beat these guys. No matter what you say, I can go out there and prove that I can still play. No matter how old I am, no matter how much I think it is a challenge, I can go out there and still play and beat these guys and go to the playoffs. Because when you look at the NFC North and what Rodgers has been able to do, he's only won one Super Bowl. And that's with being with the Green Bay Packers. And he won that with not Matt LaFleur, I believe it was Mike McCarthy. And yes, the NFC North was the dominant, basically, in that division. And, I mean, the AFC is going to get harder. It just is. You got guys like Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. You got, like, all of them. And then there's Josh Allen you have to face, probably, in the playoffs. So, for him, I don't really think it's more of who's in it, just who's in his way of getting there. I think that's how it should be taken, or that might be how he sees it, is who's in my way and who do I have to knock down to get to another Super Bowl. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense there. So Aaron Rodgers to Denver, and then where does that leave his Green Bay Packer teammate, Devante Adams? Where do you think he's going?
I think everything's kind of like just out of the air with the Packers. And if he's not franchise tagged, I could see him going to the Las Vegas Raiders, really. I mean, there's just a lot of things that show that he could go there, and how just things that he's expressed on social media too is just like how it just points there. But then again, could be somewhere else. I mean, we really all don't know for sure, but I could see him in a Raiders uniform, and it kind of makes it then if Aaron Rodgers goes to Denver, then they'll be playing each other. I mean, it just kind of like, and then obviously you have him going on the Raiders, and then you have Aaron Rodgers on Broncos, and then you have Patrick Mahomes on the other and with the Chiefs, and you have Justin Herbert with on the Chargers. It's like, who's stopping the AFC West then? I mean, I would like to see him in a Raiders uniform, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think I'm on board with that too. I think as a Green Bay Packer fan, I think the writing's on the wall effectively for Devante's time in Green Bay to end. He's loved being a member of this team, but I think he knows that we're not really going to be able to make a run anytime soon if Rodgers leaves. I think the only thing that's keeping him in Green Bay right now is Rodgers. I think he will play under the franchise tag if Rodgers stays. However, I don't think Rodgers is going to stay. So seeing him to go to Oakland or to Las Vegas would probably make the most sense here. I think Las Vegas is once again another team that is one position away from making a run. This time it is a wide receiver. Obviously, Henry Ruggs and the horrific accident that he caused back last season is the reason why the Raiders don't really have a wide receiver right now. They have Hunter Renfrow, but Renfrow is really only a slot guy. He's not going to be able to stretch the field. I do think Devante Adams is your guy. If you are Josh McDaniels, you are going to want to make a run for him. You are going to want to do everything in your power to acquire who has been one of the best deep threats and just general receiving threats in NFL for the past 5 years. So totally agree on that one. Let's talk about someone whose stock has considerably lowered. However, he is a free agent this year and should be interesting to see what happens to him. Let's talk about Allen Robinson.
Yes, Allen Robinson. To be quite honest, he's been a huge mystery on where he could go. Obviously, there are a bunch of wide receiver need teams for him, but what could intrigue me the most, and I say this for a lot of wide receivers, but it's much needed, is about the New England Patriots. And I'll say this is the wide receiver core they have right now is not going to cut it. We've already seen it. We've already seen how Mac Jones has been able to make throws, and he's been able to go make them on the run, and his wide receiver attendant drop it. And now Allen Robinson could be intrigued to go to New England Patriots, but at the same time, I'm not really sure if he would end up somewhere in the NFC. Probably in the AFC most likely is where I would think, but at the same time, he could go maybe to a team like the NFC East, or he could go somewhere in the NFC. I'm trying to say the NFC South. To me, it's a big mystery on where he could go because there are quite a few wide receiver needy teams right now. But I feel like the biggest one that needs a wide receiver is the New England Patriots. Now, there are a bunch of other wide receivers that are going to probably be free agents like Michael Gallup or anybody else like out there. But at the same time, I feel like he could be a Patriot or he could go somewhere else. So.
Yeah, I actually have a different take on that. I like the Patriots call. I think the Patriots are definitely going to be active in free agency, trying to sign a wide receiver for Mac Jones. I think Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar are not the long-term answer at the position, or Jacoby Myers. I think Bourne is coming into his own a little bit, but he's really only a wide receiver 2 max. I think he goes home. I think Allen Robinson is going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I know it's a bit of a bold take, but if you think about the offensive scheme they're running, if you think about who they brought in Doug Peterson, who every single player under him has said outright that they love playing for him. He's completely a player's coach. Having the experience that Allen Robinson has had against under Matt Nagy, under I think it was Doug Marrone when he was on the Jacksonville Jaguars. He hasn't really ever had a great coach, but also this gives him the opportunity to kind of be a weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence needs a wide receiver one, and just looking at the crop of guys in the NFL draft and looking at the pick position for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're really not going to be able to get anyone before the second round. So looking at the things there and looking at the fact that there really aren't many projected wide receiver ones in this draft, I think you could see Allen Robinson going down to Duval County and making an appearance in Jacksonville once again. I've seen estimated numbers at his contract being somewhere around 4 years, $70 million, which is perfectly manageable. I think it'll be a little bit lighter. I think because of his down year last year, it'll probably be max 4 years, $68 million or 4 years, $66 million. But that's at least my prediction. I think he's going to go home to Jacksonville. I could absolutely. New England was my second pick, though. I think New England needs to be active. But I think when we're on the topic right now, wide receivers, let's talk about Amari Cooper, because Amari Cooper is set to be released by the Dallas Cowboys very soon. He is going to be the hot topic in free agency for quite a bit. And I'm interested just to hear what you think he's going to be doing and where you think he's going to be going.
To be quite honest, I'm going to say this again, and I meant to say him when we were talking about Allen Robinson, but I could see Amari Cooper again, possibly a Patriot, but at the same time, but Baltimore Ravens. They kind of intrigued me to see, because I think the biggest need for the Ravens is building around Lamar Jackson. And I really do like Rashad Bateman, and I think he's going to be a future star, but that's really Rashad Bateman, really. And that's kind of it. And then you got Mark Andrews. I mean, you got to build a little bit more around Lamar Jackson because he was hurt last year. We saw how that affected them. But also, you got to give him guys who are going to catch the ball and who are going to be a very good target for him. I mean, Mark Andrews really was his basically target one. And I think the biggest need for them is being able to give Lamar Jackson that weapon that can go out there and make big plays. And if they can do that, and seeing as what it looks like they're going to be doing on defense, that would be a great team who are going to be fighting for a championship, because Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, I mean, he's probably going to Baltimore too. And let's just say with that pick they have in the draft, and let's just say he's still there. Sauce Gardner is there. They draft him, and then they got Marlon Humphrey, and then they got the Honey Badger. Their defense is there. That defense to me is already scary enough. So they get Amari Cooper. You got one of probably the best offenses then, I think, in the league. So to match that defense. So that's where I think I stand, is Amari Cooper could really go to the Ravens.
Yeah, I could see that. I have a few different teams in mind for him. Amari Cooper is a guy who just very much feels like a plug-and-play guy. You can pretty much throw him in any scheme. He'll still manage to get open. He's a little bit older, but he really hasn't had many injury concerns over his career too, knock on wood. So for me, obviously, I don't want to say the Ravens, because the Ravens were actually a team that came to mind. And since you said the Ravens, I kind of want to go a different way with it. I have two possible ways, but thinking about it more right now, I don't think he would fit in Cleveland. I think he would do everything in his power to actually avoid going to Cleveland. I think Cleveland's going to be once again, sadly, in a rebuild. I just think the Baker Mayfield experiment has not worked. But I'm thinking more and more about Amari Cooper and just about, history. Once again, we go back to Allen Robinson. His history, he started in Jacksonville. But Amari Cooper started out in Alabama. And if we're thinking about quarterbacks from Alabama in the NFL right now, you got Mac Jones and you got Tua Tagovailoa. However, Mac Jones, I don't think that Amari Cooper is a fit in New England. I don't think he's going to be someone that goes to New England. I think, however, Amari Cooper to Miami could be a very interesting prospect. You have Jalen Waddle there, who's really starting to look like a wide receiver one. Amari Cooper was kind of fading the CeeDee Lamb a little bit last year, becoming the wide receiver two in Dallas, but having the 1-2 punch in Amari Cooper and in Jalen Waddle, and maybe signing him to a 2-year deal just as, as a prove it thing for Tua. I mean, you got two of the best offensive weapons in the league right there in Jalen Waddle and Amari Cooper. There's really no excuse now if you're not able to produce in that offense, because I do think that Miami's entire draft is going to be investing in offensive line and in a running back. So I think Amari Cooper to Miami could be what we see very soon. Let's talk about one that's just the last one that we'll talk about. Let's talk about Russell Wilson, because there's been a lot of confusing narratives about him, things that he wants out, he doesn't want out, he wants out, goes back and forth. Where do you think he ends up? I know he's not a free agent, but he could be traded.
I think seeing him anywhere not in a Seahawks uniform is just shocking to me, because for me, I also started like back in 2014 the Seahawks, and I watched them a lot. And I watched that Super Bowl, and I watched their playoff run, and then I watched the following year the unfortunate 1 yard line throw, and just to see him somewhere else kind of really just doesn't settle well with me, to be quite honest. I mean, he's a Seahawk in my opinion. He's staying in Seattle. I don't think he goes anywhere because, A, he is Super Bowl winning quarterback. They still can build around him. I mean, we got DK Metcalf down there. We got Tyler Lockett, who is extremely underrated in my opinion. And, I mean, you just got to build just a little bit more around him. And then, I mean, we got Chris Carson down there, yeah. But, like, we go back to 2014, 2013. What did they have that they probably don't have now that was able to help them go to the Super Bowl both times? A defense. They had the Legion of Boom down there. And they don't have that right now. They definitely have not had that in a while. And that was able to elevate the offense. And when you have a good offense and a good defense, that carries you to a Super Bowl like it did in 2013. I mean, that was mainly the show, was the defense. And then we go back to where they lost New England, and I thought maybe that was more of an offensive run for them. They can still win with Russell Wilson. And just seeing him somewhere else where when there's other quarterbacks who will most likely be going somewhere else, yes, he is an intriguing name. And yes, any team would be lucky to have him because he is a great quarterback, and he's still, in my opinion, an elite quarterback. But he's staying in Seattle. And I don't think there are any doubts about really on if he's leaving. I think this is more of a thing of, hey, I'm not happy with our situation. I think you should hear me out, and I think we should do something to this team to make it better, to make it replicate 2013, 2014, because we have not seen that in a while from Seattle. And I mean, when was the last time they won the division too? I mean, we've seen the Rams, we've seen the Niners, we've seen, heck, even maybe the Cardinals run over them a little bit. And they weren't like that before. Back then when they went to the Super Bowl, they were not like that. They were the dominant team. And that's what you have to do, is you have to look back and say, what made us dominant? Who was our quarterback? And it was Russell Wilson. He is still able to win you games. So, and I feel like if they had Russell Wilson on the market, who would be their next quarterback and who would fit their scheme? I don't like having to answer that question because it seems like a very unreasonable question to ask, because you have to look at what has Russell Wilson done, and you also have to look at his lifestyle. He is part, I think, owner of the soccer team up there too. And I'm sure his wife loves it up there, and then he's got some kids too. And it's like, you have to also do that. It's kind of like the Tom Brady situation is, you're moving from New England to Tampa. I can see moving from colder weather to warmer weather is most likely a bonus. I tend to disagree a little bit since I moved from warmer weather from Florida up to Kentucky. But with his age, retirement, Florida is kind of a retirement state, and I understand that most likely was in mind. So I think the living arrangements and just saying Seattle's been my team, Seattle's been my legacy team, and I want to stay here, I believe. And I just think, hey, I want out, is kind of just a saying to the team is, we need to do something to make it better. So that's my opinion on the Russell Wilson situation.
Yeah, I go in a little bit of a different way here. I do think probably the most likely thing, I guess, is probably for him to stay because, like, opportunity to be traded, like Russell Wilson, have to be a crazy, crazy package. However, if I think about Russell Wilson, I think about his career in the NFL, I think two things stick out to me, and that's dominant defense player on the team that he's playing on, and also below average offensive line play.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking about his history and just the team that fits the most in line with his history, that probably gives him a better chance at making a playoff run, I look straight at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers who, for some reason, even though I don't understand it, like for 1 or 2 quarters of their playoff game against the Chiefs, we're giving them a bit of run for their money. Not really doing anything crazy, but their defense was holding Mahomes. It was just Ben Roethlisberger had a cooked noodle for an arm, so he couldn't get anything going down the field. If we really think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and just their fit, I see a lot of similarities between Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool to the days of Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin. You don't really have. I mean, I know a lot of people like hyping up Deontay. I just don't really think Deontay is going to be anything elite while he's in the league. I think he's good. I just don't think he's going to be elite. But I think there's a lot of similarities there. I think you look at Najee Harris, and he's really just fulfilled that role that Marshawn Lynch used to run. You know, he is a very Marshawn-like runner. He's a very rough, guy who can really pick the holes, push through, stiff arms, very rough and tumble runner who also seems to be a great person off the field. You look at the culture that the team has fostered and just the fact that they probably have the best team culture in the NFL, and they probably had it for the past few years. Their team is incredibly streamlined. It's incredibly much like a family. You really never hear any bad stories about their front office. They're very genuine with their team. I don't know if that happens to be an AFC North thing, because that actually seems to happen with the Baltimore Ravens as well. So I think, though, the most likely thing is if Wilson wants to leave, I think his main target would be the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially since the Steelers are in a fit of desperation right now since they're planning to start Mason Rudolph. And I have to assume that that is not their long-term goal right there.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So do you think there can be any surprise trades that you could see happening? And I mean like player for player trades, not like player for picks.
I think, I can think about this for a second. Any surprise trades, to be quite honest, I'm going to go back to possibly looking at the Aaron Rodgers and looking at the Russell Wilson scenarios. And either one of these quarterbacks. And I could look at, and I'm just going to go a totally different direction with everything I just said, and saying I could totally see Aaron Rodgers be a 49er. But at the same time, would the Green Bay Packers want Jimmy G and somebody else? I don't know. I don't think so. But I could also see an intriguing scenario where Russell Wilson and the Arizona Cardinals swap quarterbacks. The Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals swap quarterbacks. But at the same time, you got the Kyler Murray situation, and that all has to pan out and everything. But that also, because but at the same time, I don't think the Seahawks want to have Russell Wilson if they have to trade him to be in the same division, because that we've seen how that turns out, and that's pretty awful. And so anything else, really, I could totally see. I'm trying to think who I just was thinking about. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna come up to the Cincinnati Bengals, and they have a wide receiver who has not had really a lot of play time or anything, and his name's Auden Tate. And I could see him being traded to New England, possibly. For what, I really don't know just yet. Most likely picks, but any player that might intrigue them, I'm not really sure. But at the same time, I could see them just dealing out on Tate, because they have a history. New England and Cincinnati has a very recognizable history of trading players. And we saw last year. They traded picks for something, and they got an extra pick in the 5th round, and that really did help them get a kicker. And they just seem to always be a trading partner, no matter where it is. If it's in the draft, if it's in free agency, they seem to always just somehow just trade. And I could see them making a trade for I don't want to say another wide receiver because they already have one, probably the best wide receiver core in the league right now. But I could totally see them shipping out Auden Tate to New England because obviously New England's wide receiver needy. And given the chance, Auden Tate could be a wide receiver one. I had said probably it was like 2 years ago when Auden Tate was getting playing time and a decent amount. He looks like a mini AJ Green. He has made catches that are unbelievable, and he has just been able to catch things that come out his way, and he's been able to basically like become like a fulfilling wide receiver one. But obviously with the Bengals, he can't be that. So, and I think New England would be a great place for him to land. So I think that's one of the biggest ones that I think I could see happening for what the Bengals get in return. I'm still not really sure what they could get in return, seeing as what their needs are. Because they would probably, if they were any interested in an offensive lineman, they'd have to send more than Auden Tate, obviously. So, but I see that. I could totally see, and I'm gonna go into the part where a lot of this has been getting hyped up. I could perhaps see Tua getting shipped out to the Texans for Deshaun Watson. And I know over the season that's been the biggest thing the media has been trying to hype up. But it could pretty much happen. I mean, with what they're doing down there in Miami, I could see them being intrigued by Deshaun Watson, depending on how the lawsuits pan out. But at the same time, it's a risky situation, and it would be an awful situation for Tua Tagovailoa because going there would be terrible for him, in my opinion. It's just what they have. They need to rebuild. At the same time, the Texans have Davis Mills, who I think is quarterback one if Watson can't play. And I really like Mills. He did pretty good for what he had down there as a rookie. And, I mean, they beat the Chargers, too. I mean, that was pretty impressive, seeing as who they placed and who they were able to beat, and what Davis Mills was able to do down there with just what he had, which was not a very good resources around him. I mean, he can still make plays. So I could still see Tua and Watson switching roles. At the same time, it's very unlikely though, but I could still see it happen. So those are some of my trades I think could happen.
Okay. Yeah, I could see both of those happening. Do you think there are any surprises that you could see on draft day with any prospects?
I think we could see. Are you talking about just the first round or?
Yeah, just first round specifically.
The first rounds, I think we could see the Chargers moving up and taking Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, the cornerback. I know they need corners. It's time for them to boost up that defense because the offense, in my opinion, all you really need is to get Justin Herbert a little bit better weapons, and you're set because they got Josh Palmer down there who looks fantastic. They just need to be able to get somebody who can possibly replace Mike Williams, which I think they can do in free agency. But they got to get that defense up there, and I think it starts with drafting a corner, which could be Sauce Gardner out of Cincinnati, and I think they trade up because where they're at, I don't think they'll be able to get him. At the same time, I could totally see the New England Patriots taking a wide receiver out of Alabama if he's in any position to still be there. But I don't see them trading up or down or anywhere in that first round. And I could also see the Cincinnati Bengals taking a defensive player with their first pick in the first round at 31. Because I think they're just going full out free agency, offensive lineman. I think that's the move. And I'm going to be honest with this, I am way too harsh on offensive rookie linemen. I don't like the idea of them protecting quarterbacks like in their first year and protecting somebody like Joe Burrow. I really just don't think that's what he needs. I think he needs veterans protecting him. So I think they'll take probably a defensive guy. And, I mean, they can bolster up that defense a little bit back down there. They'll be set. And as long as they can do something in free agency with offensive linemen, they're set. They already got quarterback. They got wide receivers. They got a running back. They got all that it'll be somebody on the defensive line probably. So, I could also probably see Jacksonville trading that number 1 pick. To where? I'm not necessarily sure, but they most likely could trade it. I know they have said that they are willing to take offers in trading it. I mean, having back-to-back number 1 picks is obviously a big deal for them. They got Trevor Lawrence. They got their guy who could possibly be their guy. And if they trade that number 1 pick, probably take a wide receiver. At the same time, they probably also should take an offensive lineman. But we're going back to last year's debate of, for the Bengals, who do they take with the number 5 pick? Do they take Penei Sewell? Do they take Jamar Chase? And I don't think that's really a conversation that needs to be had with the Jaguars. We know what they need. They know what they need to do. But I could also see them trading the number 1 pick for something. And perhaps maybe getting a lot of picks out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you look at the draft and you look at prospects who are in there, one that I've seen, I'm obviously going to, kind of fanboy here because I'm a student at University of Wisconsin, but one prospect that I've seen crazily rising through the ranks is Leo Chenal. And I love Leo Chenal's upside. I think the one thing that worries me, and it worries like everyone else too, is his strength in coverage. But that's something that can absolutely be taught. I think he's going to be a project player. And I think he screams to me New England. I think New England is going to take a flyer on him in the first, or they're going to trade up to the top of the second and nab him. I think Chenal just screams to me New England. He screams to me everything that Bill Belichick loves. You got Matthew Judon, but you don't really have that number 2 linebacker next to him. Judon is excellent as a pass rusher, but against the run, he's pretty solid. But I think you could definitely get that extra help from Leo Chenal. It wouldn't even surprise me if he just genuinely went in the first round to the Patriots. I think the one thing, though, that I've been looking at and I've been, kind of stupefied about is just seeing Jack Sanborn, staying on the trend of Wisconsin linebackers. Jack Sanborn, and I will stand by this, Jack Sanborn is probably one of the most complete linebacker prospects I've seen in a very long time. He's really flown under the radar, but he was the spiritual leader of Wisconsin's defense this year. As much as Chenal was the high impact player, Sanborn was the one who was cleaning up the most. Chenal's mistakes in coverage, Sanborn would keep that up. He is nowhere near as good as the run defender as Chenal, but he is incredible all around. He gives me insanely similar vibes to Luke Kuechly. He's an incredibly intelligent player. His combine measurables so far have been pretty solid. He ran a 4.75. Or 4.76 the other day, which is pretty good. That's pretty much on where you want to be as a linebacker. You just look at Sanborn, you look at his potential. I think he's someone who I think a team, if I had to name one right off the bat in my head, I feel like you could see either the Atlanta Falcons take a flyer on him, or I think the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Eagles really need that linebacker, and they really need a guy to command their defense. I think their defense has absolutely fallen off, and they need someone who can command their team, be a team leader. I think Jack Sanborn is that guy. They already have TJ Edwards, who is a former Wisconsin player, and he's been lighting it up there as an outside linebacker. However, I think you get Sanborn, you complete that with 2/3 of your linebacker core being Wisconsin players. Just seeing the success that recent Wisconsin players have had in the league defensively. You look at both the Watt brothers as inspiration there. So I think absolutely you could see Sanborn to the Eagles as like maybe a day 2 pick, Chenal on day 1, and then just someone who's absolutely shot up draft boards in my mind. I think Jordan Davis is going top 10. He was someone who I actually had around the 19-20 area until the combine. I don't think teams are going to be able to pass on him now. I think that speed and agility from a guy who's nearly 400 pounds is going to be too much for them to resist. I think you see a team, honestly, like there have been so many teams in my mind that have been like perfect for him. But I also think that, with the history of the New York Giants, and I think the Giants have a penchant for, sometimes overdrafting guys, but at the same time, they don't really have a pick outside that top 10. They have a pick at, I believe it's pick 5 and then pick 7. I think they would absolutely be justified in drafting Jordan Davis at pick 7. I think defensive tackle, while it's not their biggest need, I think it's one where they are playing in a division. Antonio Gibson is being utilized a lot more. I think Miles Sanders is going to have a bounce back year. I think you're going to see Zeke have a bounce back year as well, because it's going to have to be a prove it year. He's kind of slacked off a little bit. I think having a guy who can stop the run like Jordan Davis is going to be incredibly important for the Giants. And I think I could see him going to the Giants in round 1. Okay, so let's just go with some rapid fire stuff as we begin to close down this interview. Ketchup or mustard?
Ketchup.
Okay. TV or video games?
Video games.
All right, which video games?
Madden 22 and Fortnite.
Dope. Okay, what team in Madden?
What
team do you mean in Madden?
Well, I mostly play MUT, so
okay.
Mainly my MUT team, really. So
sounds good. Okay,
I go Bengals theme team. So
dope. Okay, swimming or skiing / snowboarding?
Swimming.
Okay, if you could go to dinner with any 3 celebrities, dead or alive, who would they be?
The first one, well, I guess you could call him a celebrity. Obviously, Evan McPherson. That's my first one. The second one would be Tom Holland. And I think the third one would be Adele.
Okay. So Tom Holland, Evan McPherson, Adele?
Yep.
Dope. Who is your role model?
I think mainly my biggest role model, like for mainly my whole entire life, has been my parents, really. Just like being able to like see how they've been going through the world and how they've been able to go through adversity as well. And then the one who's been starting to become my role model, really just being able to watch her on Good Morning Football, has been Kay Adams. Just seeing how she has been able to go through the process of doing everything and being on a show like Good Morning Football, it's been extremely awesome to watch, and how like teams and fan bases have accepted her so much as being like rooting for those teams, and like her expressing herself about certain teams and how she's dead set on like a certain team and how she thinks and she sees them in a different way that other people don't. I think that's incredible too.
Awesome. So I guess just to close things out, what message would you like to send to other young women who are also interested in covering topics in male-dominated fields such as sports journalism?
For me, it has been to be able to just even have the opportunity to send this message is incredible, but just to not let anything get in your way, really. And when you see a challenge, know that you can do it and that you can overcome it. And being a female in a dominant male area is nothing to be afraid of. And to say that you want to do this and that you have always maybe wanted to do this or you want to do it, go for it. I mean, it's something that I think comes once in a lifetime opportunity, is being able to do something like this and perhaps cover things like this and being interesting in sports like football or any type of sport, honestly, is incredible to have. And just to be able to appreciate what sports is and like all the types of sports, and to say that you're interested in it and that you want to do something with that passion, just do it. I mean, if somebody tells you you can't do it, then just prove them wrong and do it. That's really what I think is the biggest thing, is being able to take that challenge and to just go after it. I think so.
I love that as a closing message. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been the first episode of the spring series of the Allheart Podcast. Next week on March 13th, we're going to be coming back with Jacob Hallenstein. He's going to be talking about business and management and financials. But this episode, it's been lovely to have you here, Isabelle. You've shed a really good amount of insight here on your experience as a woman in the field of sports journalism. It's been really inspirational just to hear about how you've handled adversity. And it's also been great hearing about your takes for the offseason and what you could see happening in the NFL. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me on this. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, until next week, this has been the Allheart Podcast, episode 1, and we will see you next week on March 13th at 9 p.m. Central, or at 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, follow us on Instagram at Allheart Network and on Twitter at Allheart Pod. Have a great night, everyone.